This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. It is a new era for presidential politics. Tonight will be the first night of the Democratic National Convention, and it is mostly virtual this week. The Democratic Party will formally nominate its picks for the next president and vice president of the United States, former Vice President Joe Biden and California Senator Kamala Harris. Well, CBN's David Brody is covering the convention this week and is looking at how President Trump is responding. David, thanks for joining us.
You bet, Heather. Thanks.
Well, so, David, it's so interesting. The polls show a tight race right now. What do you expect to be the main message from Democrats this week, and who do they need to win over?
Well, it's a good question, Heather, and it's got a lot of layers. Let's begin with this. The message overall is going to be, let's get back to normal. And should America really be turning into this? And what this is this Donald Trump Twitter bonanza, if you will, this idea that Donald Trump has broken all conventional norms. And so there's that sense, I think, this week that you'll hear from Democrats to say, let's just stop the nonsense. And I think that's going to be the overall theme. And having said that, who do they try to win over? This has been the dilemma all along. The Democrat operatives I'm talking to have all along said, look, we need to get minorities out. We need to get suburban women out. We believe that those younger voters are key. That's all that Bernie crowd. Part of the problem, though, is you've got the moderates as well. You've got those blue-collar Democrats, the ones that Trump won over in 2016 in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and other states like that, Michigan. So the question is, you're trying to play to both sides here. You want votes on both ends, but at the same time, you have to have one unifying message, and that's what could trip up Democrats here at the convention.
Yeah, really challenging to bring the whole party together. Well, I also want to ask you about the fact that both conventions are pretty much virtual. How does that change the dynamics? And do you think fewer Americans are going to tune in just because it's all online?
Well, I think fewer Americans will definitely tune in. So that's a problem for both Republicans and Democrats, quite frankly. Look, I think what this is all about, Heather, and you know the deal. You've been around a while as well. I say that with all due respect, by the way, which is that it's about viral moments, right? In other words, what's the soundbite that's going to win over the news cycle? And I think that's what I'm going to be looking for, especially as it relates to Monday evening with Michelle Obama and Bernie Sanders, some big wigs, if you will, for the Democrats. And remember, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez only getting 60 seconds. And quite frankly, if you're someone that wants to win the presidency like Joe Biden, that might be 60 seconds too much. The more that she can go into hibernation until the morning of Wednesday, November 4th, might be better for the Democrats at this point.
All right. And you have got President Trump making a number of campaign stops this week. What is he going to try and communicate to offset what the Democrats are saying?
Well, shockingly, Donald Trump is going to do as he would like The Apprentice on NBC. He's going to do some counter programming. So he will be in Minnesota. 10 key electoral votes up for grabs. The Trump campaign believes they can win Minnesota. He only lost it by 45,000 votes or so. The polls show it to be very close as well. So he's going to be on Air Force One doing some rallies right outside the plane there, talking about economy and jobs. He'll go to Wisconsin and do the same thing. That's the play by the Trump campaign.
Well, there is a lot to watch this week, David Brody. Thanks so much for your time.
You bet.
The Postal Service has become a hot-button campaign issue, and House lawmakers have called postal leaders to testify before Congress. CBN's Dale Hurd has that story.
3/4 of the country is eligible to vote by mail, and that puts the Postal Service square in the middle of accusations by Republicans and Democrats that the other side wants to use it to steal the election.
The Postal Service has warned 46 states that mail-in ballots may not arrive in time to count in the November 3rd election. Democrats accuse President Trump of removing mail sorting equipment and mailboxes in an effort to squelch mail-in balloting. Republicans have raised concerns that mass mail-in voting will lead to fraud. House Democratic leaders have demanded that Postmaster General DeJoy and the Board of Governors chairman testify in an emergency hearing on August 24th.
Our elections are sacred. Men and women have died for them and the right to vote. And to do this is disgraceful.
We've got to do everything we can to get rid of this new Postmaster General, who is clearly a campaign contributor for Trump, trying to undermine the Postal Service.
President Trump says DeJoy is doing exactly what he was told to do. Try to make the money-losing Postal Service more efficient.
Yeah, he's a fantastic man. He wants to make the post office great again.
President Trump insists he's not trying to sabotage the Postal Service, but he is blocking $25 billion in aid because he doesn't want to, in his words, fund fraudulent mail-in balloting. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, in other news, a hostage situation near Austin, Texas is finally over after 16 hours of negotiations with police. On Sunday, 3 Cedar Park police officers were shot after responding to a domestic disturbance call. The case turned into a hostage situation, but it ended peacefully when the suspect and last hostage came out of the home. Cedar Park police say the scene will continue to be active while they investigate. Well, nationwide protests calling for defunding and abolishing police departments are still gathering steam. Months after the murder of George Floyd, crime rates and widespread violence are also growing. George Thomas has the latest.
From Los Angeles to New York City, from Philadelphia to San Francisco, the movement to defund police departments across the country is growing. This as at least 12 other cities also brace for severe budget cuts, not seen in more than a decade. The result, some say, is a spike in violence nationwide. Days after the city council in Austin, Texas voted to slash $150 million from the police budget, 3 Cedar Park police officers, a suburb of the city, were shot on Sunday after a man barricaded himself with 3 of his family members.
I visited them in the hospital along with their families. They are all in stable condition and doing well.
The state's governor warning the cuts in police funding will pave the way for lawlessness. In Chicago, new video emerges showing a violent confrontation between Black Lives Matter protesters and police.
This group changed their appearance and began pushing our officers and eventually assaulting them.
One protester allegedly hitting a police officer repeatedly with a skateboard. The mayor of Chicago saying the attack on police officers was planned and that protesters came looking for a fight.
It's not spontaneous when you bring U-Haul trucks, cargo vans, and high-end robbery tools. We are determined to make sure that we get to the bottom of this and bring those responsible for this organized crime effort to justice.
Authorities in Chicago now monitoring social media sites for threats against officers and businesses.
What we want to do is expand our capacity in this space of looking at intelligence on open source.
And it's not just in Chicago. Violence now erupting in other major cities across the country as well. In New York City, more than 24 shootings in less than 48 hours. In Philadelphia, a mass shooting at a block party injures 3 teens and 2 others. Shots were also fired at police officers. 60 shell casings from several weapons were found on the scene, including rounds from an AR-15. On Sunday in Cincinnati, 18 people were shot, 4 killed in 4 different incidents.
Horrific and tragic that we have this much violence and potential for that much loss of life in our city.
Meanwhile, on Saturday, police in Stone Mountain, Georgia had to step in when militias and white supremacists faced off with hundreds of counter-protesters. A similar scene in Kalamazoo, Michigan, as fistfights erupted between members of an alleged racist group and counter-protesters. Police also had to intervene there. All this happening as a new study shows violent crimes on the rise nationwide. Murder rates in 20 major cities spiking by 37% between May and June of this year. Aggravated assaults also jumping by roughly the same amount during the same period. George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, in other news, the NBA is helping to bring a faster and easier coronavirus test to market. The Food and Drug Administration has authorized the use of the test called the Saliva Direct test. Yale University developed it and is using it on NBA players and staff during the league's restart in Florida. It was developed for people who have no COVID symptoms, and it's thought to be about 90% as accurate as other tests using nose and throat swabs. Each test would cost about $10. Well, the legal battle continues for Pastor John MacArthur and his Grace Community Church in California. The Los Angeles Health Department filed a last-minute appeal following a Friday Superior Court ruling in favor of MacArthur's church. The congregation did meet Sunday despite a late-night ruling by an appeals court against the church. MacArthur said they were meeting in obedience to God's word, which tells Christians to assemble together and worship. Conservative commentator and radio host Todd Starnes says this case should be a warning for Christians.
Religious liberty is our first freedom. It is our bedrock. It is the foundation of our country. And if you're able to eliminate that, then I think the whole thing falls apart, which is why it's so important for Christians especially to stand up, to rise up, and to fight back.
In Iowa, people are still feeling the effects of that storm that blasted through the state last week. Today, Governor Kim Reynolds is asking the federal government for help. Reynolds is filing an expedited presidential major disaster declaration and asking for nearly $4 billion. She says both President Trump and Vice President Pence have pledged their full support. The storm damaged thousands of homes and destroyed millions of acres of corn with hurricane-force winds that topped 100 miles per hour. Well, there is a growing movement to make workplaces more friendly for people of faith. Last month, PayPal launched Believe. It is an employee resource group designed to promote awareness and understanding of workers' faiths and worldviews. Walmart, Texas Instruments, American Airlines, and Salesforce also have similar groups. Dr. Brian Grimm, president of the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation, is spearheading the push to make corporate America faith-friendly.
They're not there to substitute for church or for going to synagogue or some other place of worship, but they're there to give support to employees, recognizing that if you bring your whole self to work, including your faith, that you're more likely to stick at the job, be excited about the job, and it gives you insights into customers and clients and your fellow employees, even if they're a different faith.
By 2050, there will be 2.3 billion more religiously affiliated people on the planet. Research also shows that economies thrive when cultures are open to religion. Straight ahead, a look at why the Middle East UAE peace deal is striking a nerve.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
The new peace deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates represents a major shift in the Middle East. Last week, Israel and the UAE announced plans to establish full diplomatic relations in a U.S.-brokered agreement. Deals between Israel and the UAE are expected in the coming weeks. Today, Palestinian leaders are denouncing the agreement, and Turkey's president is threatening to suspend ties with the UAE over the deal. And joining us now for more on the agreement is our Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell. Chris, let's start with Turkey's reaction to the agreement. Why is Erdogan so upset?
Well, Erdogan is so upset because he sees himself as a sultan, as the leader, or hopefully the leader of the Islamic world. At least that's what he would like. So he sees this as a threat to his ambitions and goals in the wider Middle East. So the UAE actually having a peace deal with Israel is something that he really doesn't like, except the fact that he actually has normal relations. You would think that he would expect that to be okay. I have normal relations with Israel. Why shouldn't other nations? It's all because of his greater goals, his greater ambitions to be the sultan, the leader of the Islamic world.
And how are Israelis reacting this weekend and today?
Well, Israelis are actually quite excited about this. You can tell, actually, the poll numbers of Benjamin Netanyahu had been sinking until now. It actually stopped that sinking, and he's actually increased in the polls. I think I've seen something about 80% of Israelis like this, and they like it for a number of reasons. First of all, they see that they can actually go to the UAE. And I think Israelis have a genuine desire for peace with their Arab neighbors. This satisfies that desire. There's going to be tourism. There's going to be economic benefit to Israel. So there's a lot of positive for Israelis right now.
All right. And Chris, what are you seeing from the Palestinian Authority at this point in time? How are they responding?
Oh, they think it's treasonous. It was a stab in the back. This is something that violated what's called the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative, where all the Arab nations weren't going to do anything with Israel until the Palestinian-Israeli conflict was settled. And so they are reacting very, very much against this. But we'll see what happens. You know, now that the UAE has made peace with Israel, it might put pressure on the Palestinians to finally sit down at the table with the Israelis.
And what do you see, how does this affect Iran in all of this?
Well, Iran is very much against this, and here's why. Because they want the whole region. First of all, they want to dominate the whole region, and now that they see Israel allying with their other enemies. Now, Iran is a mortal enemy of many of these Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and others. And so to have them ally with Israel is something they really didn't want to see. So now you might have a much more united front with Israel and these Gulf Sunni states against Shiite Iran. And it's really not good news for the Islamic Republic. As somebody told me recently, it's good for Christians to pray that Iran doesn't react with terrorism, even an attack on some of these Gulf states.
All right. And Chris, just briefly, do you see prophetic implications in all of this?
Yes, and here's why. Ezekiel 38 and 39 say that one day there'll be a confederation of nations coming against Israel in peace when Israel is in peace and security. I mean, if you have all these Arab nations start to make peace treaties with Israel, you see that peace and security developing. On the same hand, you also see this confederation of Turkey, Iran, Russia, referred to in Ezekiel 38 and 39, wanting to come down, attack Israel and their Arab allies.
All right. There's a lot going on there. Chris Mitchell, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks.
Did a governor's nursing home policy result in preventable deaths? That's the question we're tackling right after the break.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
And we return now with a look at how COVID-19 is ravaging nursing homes. Could the deaths be far worse than reported, especially in New York? As Charlene Aaron reports, families and lawmakers are demanding answers.
The official COVID-19 death toll in nursing homes across New York stands at 6,600. But that number may be far greater because the state only counts residents who died on nursing home property and not those who died after being transported to hospitals. For Fox News meteorologist Janice Dean, the stats on COVID-related nursing home deaths are personal. Earlier this year, she lost her elderly in-laws to the virus.
So coronavirus happens. We're not allowed to see them. We didn't know his dad was ill at all. We were getting updates from the nursing home, regular updates. And one Saturday morning, we get an update the end of March saying, your dad's not feeling well. And 3 hours later, they call us back and tell us he's died. His mom was in the assisted living residence. And several days later, she got ill. And she had to be brought to the hospital, and they diagnosed her with coronavirus, and she just, died a few days later.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says his state has only 20% of COVID deaths from nursing homes, compared to 68% in Pennsylvania, 64% in Massachusetts, and 44% in New Jersey. The controversy began in March when Cuomo mandated recovering coronavirus patients be placed in nursing homes. This despite the availability of the Navy hospital ship Comfort, 2,500 hospital beds set up inside the Javits Convention Center, and the field hospital set up by Samaritan's Purse. Many say the policy led to thousands of possibly preventable deaths across the state. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul wants Cuomo removed from office.
Governor Cuomo ought to be impeached for the worst public policy, public health decision, maybe in a century, sending patients with coronavirus back to nursing homes.
Despite multiple calls for an independent investigation, the governor's still refusing as recent as last week.
No, I wouldn't do an investigation. I think you'd have to be blind to realize it's not political. Just look at where it comes from and look at the sources and look at their political affiliation.
The New York State Legislature wants answers and recently invited families whose loved ones died in elder care facilities to testify. During those hearings, lawmakers also grilled State Health Commissioner Howard Zucker for failing to report the actual number of COVID deaths in nursing homes.
Your administration's definition truly misrepresents the true scale of this crisis in our nursing home. Let's try and get the full picture here and now. How many of New York's nursing home residents died in hospitals?
I'm not prepared to give you a specific number.
Meanwhile, Dean believes she was disinvited from the public hearing because of her affiliation with Fox News. Regardless, she says all the families affected deserve answers.
I would like a 9/11 style commission hearing because it's not only New York. There are several other states that did the same thing, putting coronavirus patients into nursing homes. So, listen, that's my hope. I don't know if that'll ever happen. But my argument is, Governor Cuomo, what do you have to hide?
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Celebrities celebrating their love for Jesus Christ. Coming up, what one is sharing about his baptism.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
A celebrity couple is rejoicing in Jesus Christ today. Singer Justin Bieber posted this picture on social media shortly after he and his wife Hailey were baptized together. You can see the couple holding hands as they are submerged underwater. Bieber called it one of the most special moments of his life. Seattle-based pastor Judah Smith oversaw the celebrities' joint baptism. And that is it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Please remember you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. And also, please tell us what you think about the stories that you have seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or just talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope that you will join us next time. Have a great day.